All right. Good day, beautiful people. Every time that you come into this space, I just want you to know it's a great day because we're always going to talk to somebody that is going to give us some great information. And so I'm Chisa Penix Brown. Today, we are bringing you another live episode of Give It to the People Live. And this is our show where what we do is we highlight Black owned businesses, women owned businesses, and BIPOC businesses, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We do that because a lot of times people don't shine a light on these businesses. And so we also represent people that help these businesses to be able to grow, to be able to survive and thrive. And today, we always keep a great guest. This one right here, this guy right here, he's awesome, but he's also like into so many different things. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to be a part of a program that is called Black Wall Street Forward. And we are in a group based in Durham where we are putting together an event that is going to be happening sometime soon. Now, with this particular event, it's pretty much a cohort where we got to kind of meet some new people, and being able to be a part of something where you can meet people that you get along with, people that are about their business, and then also just people that are different than you is always a great thing. So I'm going to bring on Keith, because Keith Daniel, I feel like I want to call you, like, you know how people say Reverend Doctor and they say all of the words, Reverend
Yeah.
Doctor, Mr. Sir, right? Like you want to put all of that together. And so I want you to just give people a little bit about you, Keith, just a
Yeah.
little bit of background, because you have so many different areas, divinity, business, VC, all of that. Just give them a little background about you.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Chiefs, for having me on the show. I feel deeply honored. The work we've been doing with Black Wall Street Forward has been so important to me personally. I'm about fifth generation from Durham, North Carolina, and came back after being born and raised in Washington, D.C., came back for college here and never looked back. It's been over 30 years now. Had a chance to just interact with people in the nonprofit space, multi-sector leaders, and I just always been so inspired by people in many spaces. And most of my career has been in higher education administration. I'm actually on Duke's campus today for a class that I have following this. But just loving the educational environment. And I know professional development, we all need it. We all need coaches, mentors, people to help us move along our journeys. And I've just had a chance to kind of navigate different spaces in the university setting and the community-based setting with nonprofits. And now as a VC for the past 4 years. So I feel so very fortunate for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when I want you to touch on the divinity portion as well, because
Yeah.
when you said that, I was like, wow. And I'm gonna tell you why I felt like it was a wow. Not like
Hmm.
your presence definitely gives me, calm, collected. And I had the opportunity to see you speak at the NC Idea conference.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there as a audience member and I'm listening, and the way that you approach things is drastically different. So I find that it's very interesting for you to be in that sector, but then also to be in the sector where you're helping people to get money, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes
Right.
religion and money don't really
Hmm.
work well together because we don't want Jesus to turn over the tables on anybody, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's a good
I just
image.
find that interesting. So how did you
Right.
even get into that to become a VC?
Yeah, well, first it was by association. I worked at the business school at Duke for 8 years in student affairs and MBA admissions. So I kind of cut my teeth in a space of like emerging professionals in the business world. A lot of them were at the time were going into consulting or investment banking, these kind of high profile business careers. So I had a lot of friends with wealth who were well along in their careers. Um, but in 2000, when my second child was born, I kind of went through a value shift and got the really what people call the call to ministry and entered divinity school. And as you said, have a master's and a doctorate degree in theology now. So most of my heart and mind is oriented around what I call existential things, things that are like bigger than my own story or my own life. And certainly kind of this idea that there's a divine being in the world, you know, who is not like aloof, but actually is involved and wants to see us flourish, right? And also respect other religious traditions that have anything that is targeted towards human flourishing, the common good, ending violence, and loving humanity and all of its expressions. So when I get up every day, that's kind of exciting motivation to me. The turn to the VC sort of private world, besides the fact that I had all these wealthy people that I had pretty much access to, for one, where I could ask for money or who wanted to support things that I'm involved in, made it possible for me to sit in this seat of a VC now. But it truly wasn't something that one day I thought to myself, I want to be a VC.
Mhm.
But I did have that, as I said, back in 2000, when I got that sense of call to Divinity School. It was about people. I want
Mhm.
to see people happy and feeling like they have purpose and life and meaning. And work is one of the biggest ways we get that. Now, sometimes we moan work because they ain't got to get up. I got to go to work today. But when you shift that and you think about, I have the privilege to go to work and hopefully somewhere that's doing something good for someone other than myself.
Mhm.
So I hope that's what kind of comes out, because that's really my heart. So when you say that, it means a lot to me. Like,
Mhm.
okay, this guy doesn't have a traditional background, but he has, something unique or important to bring to the space,
Mhm.
even though you're right. Charity and investment are two totally different things.
They are. And I just think that, as listening to you, I'm like, wow, you can see a difference. And I mean, literally see a difference in relation to, at that specific, event, your counterparts. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize, or maybe they don't pay attention because maybe it's not an important factor to them, but just how many VCs are not Black.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
your typical person that's going to be a VC is going to be a white man. That's just
Mhm.
what you typically see. But
Yeah.
do you think, and so I have a two-part question. Do you think that your proximity to the wealth that was
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
and then also leveraging your proximity to that wealth, was a powerful tool? Because to me, a lot of people aren't even in the room. They aren't in a space where they have
Yeah.
access to people that have money. Then when they do have access to them, they don't even use it properly. So what do you think
Mhm.
about that?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So that's very, keen observation. I mean, we have to make a choice in the Black community if, as it comes to certain professions and fields. And oftentimes it has to do with, who's close to us that says, hey, you can do this too.
Mhm.
And here's a doorway to that, right? Friends and family, we talk about that as rounds to raise capital. I mean, it's really true.
Mhm.
I don't believe in the saying it's not what you know, it's who you know. I actually believe in the saying, like, you got to know some stuff and you need to know some people to really
Mhm.
get far, right? And it's increasingly knowledge and knowing where the opportunities may be. And I was fortunate enough. Again, I didn't really go looking for this.
Mhm.
I did get into some intentional partnership with my co-founder prior to this around the questions of economic injustice and looking at the historical, disenfranchisement and disillusion of the Black community from, significant wealth building in this country. Right? We get progress, and then we have violent regress.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's it is what it is in America. If you're fortunate enough to have someone to see you not as charity but as an investment,
Mhm.
um, then that's a big deal, especially across the color line. My colleague happens to be a white man who's 10 years my senior,
Uh-huh.
and we connected on some other, what I call, below the iceberg level
Mhm.
of like recognition and value.
Mhm.
And so that just made for the possibility for us to start our fund.
Mhm. Now, why do you think that you don't see as many Black VCs? It's not that there's a lack of Black people with money,
Yeah.
but why do
Well,
you think that they don't necessarily become VCs?
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really long, I mean, my mind goes to being in the educational space, for example. I ran a summer institute at the business school at Fuqua for about 20 years, and was for minority, underrepresented students, mostly Black and brown students from
Mhm.
all over the country. And they would come to campus. And in the 90s, it was focused on working for corporate America. And, that's most of our parents are not VCs. I mean, are not in investment or finance. And
Mhm.
we just, it takes they say it takes a while to change culture. It may take 10 years to change culture, right?
Mhm.
So shifting like the idea that it's possible for us to be in the VC space is big. It takes time. The educational space has to develop that. The entrepreneurship and innovation centers that are at universities now, again, they're 10 years old, maybe 10,
Mhm.
12, maybe 15. I mean, I need to remember the date that Duke opened its center.
Mhm.
I know there's things now like HBCU.VC.
Mhm.
And then, of course, with the George Floyd incident, which, it always painful. Love to say his name, but it's always just so painful because the images are so traumatic.
Yeah.
But the fact that there was more attention turned to Black and brown wealth building strategies, that increased it some. But depending on where you are as well. I mean, Durham is a great legacy city, but people need to understand that legacy is essentially built around one major, incredible institution in terms of the finance space. And we have, of
Uh-huh.
course, the great NCCU,
Mhm.
but it's about proximity and opportunity and
Mhm.
access, and then the want to. I mean, again, my life is to some degree has been doing things that I feel called to, but I probably would not have chosen to do.
Mm.
Right? It's one thing to say I'm gonna go get my 4-year degree because I want to be a VC, or I'm going to go to an MBA program because
Mhm.
that's my aspiration. But again, most folks, again, the MBA program I was in, they were going into finance, consulting. I just met with an MBA student a couple of weeks ago, and she was like, "There's really not a strong support system here for us to really get in this space."
And that's what I was
So,
thinking. So, when we look at that, if a person says, listen, I would like to become a VC,
yeah,
the resources that are available for that. So, like, there's plenty of resources to start a business, plenty of resources to grow a business, but a VC is a very specific area of business that
yeah,
you have to be financially able to do that, first off, and
yeah,
then also to make good decisions about the businesses that you choose to work with. So, you said the
yeah,
HBCU.VC. Is there
yeah.
anything else that you could give people if they're interested in possibly seeing what they could do to become a VC?
Yeah, you have to study the industry. I mean, there's Angel Capital Association of America. There's a National Venture Capital Association of America. Check those websites out. They have resources. There is membership dues and conferences. Certainly, I used to tell students in my first job in career services here at Duke, uh, for students who are interested in government, nonprofit, and the public sectors, you have to do informational interviews with people who are in the space
Mhm.
so you can understand what it takes. It does take financial acumen, but depending on the composition of the team that you're trying to build, and you should, look to build a team in a VC space, whether it's you and one other person or a couple other people. And the key is be able to raise money.
Mhm.
Raising money is hard, but then I've I don't want to sound like contradictory, but raising money is, I mean, it's a possible, very possible, if you have a vision, an idea, and are able to communicate well. So learning the language, understanding, the nature of how to do it, and then it's the grind. I mean, it's
Mhm.
500 no's to a couple yeses, and
Mhm.
we have a relatively small fund. It doesn't take multiple millions. I mean, people here, and that's the other thing. I think sometimes people won't aspire for something because it seems like, oh, that's I got to raise 50 million. No, you
Mhm.
can do a good amount with what we've done. For example,
Mhm.
a little less than 4 million.
Mhm.
So resources are there. They are there more so within the university settings, as I said, because
Okay.
they've established the innovation entrepreneurship centers, and they're starting to try to figure out how to build more um, opportunities and educational possibilities for the VC space. But it's still there's a long way to go, like with a lot of other things,
Mhm.
because to some degree it's a very highly privileged space, and privilege and power is well protected in this country.
Mhm.
you know,
Definitely. Yeah.
so it again goes back to relationship. If you happen to know someone who is in the space and they're willing, you might like other things. You might have to volunteer your time initially. I mean, we do have people calling our firm oftentimes to say, "Hey, what can I do just to be behind the curtain with you guys
To learn. Yeah.
to learn?" You have that apprenticeship kind of model, right? Mentorship, apprenticeship. Hmm.
No, and I think that could be a great model though for people, because I think sometimes people are stingy. Sometimes people don't want to share those resources. They don't want to share the abundance of the people that they're connected to. And
Yeah.
for me, I've just never really been that type of person. So to me,
Hmm.
that doesn't resonate with a person like me. It's just like, okay, well, what do you need to know? Okay, well, let me tell you. Well, I may not know
Yeah.
the answer, but let me refer you to somebody else that does. So with your fund, can you talk on it just really quickly about the type of businesses that you invest in? And then a
Mhm.
second question, you could choose which one you want to answer it is, would you recommend that a person is in business first before they become a VC?
Yeah, so we entered the space as newbies,
Okay.
rookies, literally. We had to
Nope,
build a
you didn't
team.
have a business at all before that?
I've had my own business, which is
Okay.
mainly independent consulting work for
Okay.
educational institutions and nonprofits.
Hmm.
Um, but in terms of deciding the thesis, what you're asking, like type of business, we had to set a thesis. Our initial conception was that we wouldn't narrow ourselves to any type of business except that it had to be with revenue.
Okay.
And we thought about $50,000 of revenue, proven customers, right?
Okay.
And scalable. And that there are lots of sectors where money can be made if a business is able to scale and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And at the early stage, which is typically the stage where in order to really grow, you gotta bring on, strengthen your team, strengthen your product, market fit, strengthen your operational side, any number of use of funds. And so we have a diverse portfolio from a cafe shop owner to all the way to various SaaS products that are bringing solutions to small to medium sized enterprise businesses, B2B businesses. And it's been a learning process for us. I mean, we were essentially a startup fund without a track record,
Mm-hmm.
which made it that much more adventuresome and exciting and hard,
Mm-hmm.
all in the same, which is something you kind of have to be built for, like wanting that sort of challenge.
Yeah.
And so that's our first fund just had more of what they call an agnostic thesis, but we essentially moved into spaces where we had some degree of a significant degree of passion, like, oh, this is a product that needs to be brought to the market, or needs a solution that needs to bear. And we had some level of expertise either within ourselves or within our advisory group.
Mm-hmm.
The second question you asked, which one of the two?
Do you think that people should have a business
Business
first before
backing.
they become a VC?
If the road to success is probably better if you've run a company before, had successfully failed, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that you learned that's the only way you
Mm-hmm.
successfully fail. Um, and having some better, having some pretty substantive understanding of like financial uh, terms of financing, right?
Okay.
That was something that I had to learn a lot on the job for, and it would have been nice to come in with that. I think we would have probably moved more quickly in making some of our investment decisions, but we had learned as we went. And fortunately, we had again tremendous counsel and advisors who kind of walked us along, but we could
Mm-hmm.
have moved more quickly had we had that financial acumen. Me in particular, my co-founder had some experience in working with local Angel Group and the RTP Capital Group, to be specific. I'll give them a nod here, and the syndicate group of the other funds that are operating in our regional space.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, if a person said, listen, Keith, I have some revenue. I can prove this. I need, everything you just said. I'm really at that point.
Mhm.
What do they need for you to say, okay, well, let me at least pay attention to you? Because they
Mhm.
have the basics of what you just said, but is there
Mhm.
something that's kind of like an intrinsic value, or is it the product itself that
Mhm.
makes you feel kind of led to go in a certain direction to say, this looks like a company we should pay attention to? If a person is saying, look, I want to get this VC funding, but what do I need to do to attract
Yeah.
VC?
Yeah. For someone like us, we've learned that we have a preference around B2B companies. Again, for those business to business versus business direct to consumer, because I mean the consumer space is just, there's some layers of complexity to that and more competition, and depending on what you're addressing for the consumer appetite or the consumer need, that we're not ruling it out, but the business to business model, or the business to business and then business to consumer model, is another important factor, for us to give consideration to a founder. Having been in the business for at least a couple years, typically, because that's what it takes before you're actually,
Revenue.
generating some level of revenue, even if you're not at break even or you're getting there, right? Uh, we look at your team, we look at your background and expertise, why your skill set is uniquely suited for what you're bringing to bear to the market,
Mm-hmm.
the size of the market. There's some, if there's some basic criteria that we ask that you complete on our website
Okay.
under the founders section. And that usually when people get to that, they'll kind of, once they start asking the question, if you don't have pretty good answers, like what's the valuation of your company, or
Mhm.
um, what are your revenue projections? What are your do you have an advisory board, even if there's
Mhm.
not a functional, formal board, but have you won any competitions to date?
Mhm.
And then you send us a pitch deck. And a
Okay.
pitch deck is not a business plan in the
Mhm.
traditional sense that people think, a 50-page document. It's like about 10 to 12 slides that kind of lays out, like, here's the problem we're solving, here's how big the market is, here's where we think we can be in 5 years from a financial standpoint with the right investment. um, yeah, in some ways it's not too challenging to compose that, in the sense, like, if you are an astute founder, entrepreneur, and have been
Mhm.
in the space for a while, you should be able to make that case through a pitch deck, and then be prepared for the grilling of investors.
Yeah.
Some of the grilling will be ignorance, and some of it will be, you don't know what you're doing.
Mhm.
Because investors that have been in a particular sector for a long time will be very clear about that.
Yeah, and they can kind of tell. All right, I'm not sure what's going on here, but
Yeah.
I think that that's an important thing, because I was definitely going to ask you about pitching, but you already answered that. So
Hmm.
I would imagine the person gets there, they look at the application, and they're like, "Well, I don't know this." So this way,
Hmm.
it kind of puts a pause in a certain area where they know that they need to go get that information, make sure that
Yeah.
that's together, and then they can go ahead and they can send that pitch deck. And do you request a pitch deck, or do they send it after while
Mhm.
they're filling it out?
Yeah, we ask that it be sent as an accompaniment to you
Okay.
completing we call it the registry.
Okay.
Yeah, so that can be emailed directly to me, um, or it comes to me when it gets emailed, and I'm usually the first to look at it. And then if a person gets further along, once we start screening, we'll score it based on a rating system that we have. And then if you get into the cohort of considered investments, and usually it's like 6 to 8 companies that'll sit down with our investment committee. It's
Okay.
about a 2-hour process, and we give you a little longer time to pitch, because most people see pitch competition like 3 minutes, 7 minutes. It's like fast, but we give you about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and then there's almost 45 minutes of question Q&A from there.
Now,
Hmm.
when a person comes to you and let's just say they're not ready, and you know that they're
Yeah.
not ready,
Hmm.
is there anything that you give them as far as feedback so that they can kind of
Hmm.
go back to the drawing board, and then maybe that, a year, 2 years later, then maybe they'll
Hmm.
repitch, and then maybe that might be what they need
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
So what
It's
kind of
not
feedback?
sorry. Yeah, it's not uncommon for the relationship with VCs to take some time, and
Mhm.
be prepared for that. It's not, if you can get an access to a VC and start a relationships and conversation, it's worth it. You don't want to go too early, but you want to go with the right kind of thought process and doing the research
Mhm.
on the firm and the fund. Because again, like we were talking earlier before our call, I mean, time is so precious. I try to devote out when we first got into business, I was voting about 15 hours a week, I think it was, to
Wow.
talk. Is that right? I forget. I try to be very available. And now that we're 4 years in, about to start our second fund, I'm limited to Wednesdays, 30-minute calls. And I make that available on my email where people can click the link,
Mhm.
and I'll be happy to get on a short call, um, phone call, that is. I'm just like, hey, let's talk through. Glad to introduce. What are your hard questions that you're facing?
Mhm.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to the questions, and those are, I mean, they come fast when it comes to the nature of the business that you're trying to bring to market. But some of them are basic. Do you know the competitive pool? Do you know how much the size of the market? Why this area? That um, your target market. Um, other things that may impede growth, whether it's legal stuff, or
Mhm.
we tend to stay out of spaces that are really highly regulated. Although some people, I mean, there are firms that's what they're
That's
going to be
amazing.
in, like medical technology, or
Mhm.
agribusiness, or some other very specialized sector.
Mhm.
Um, so
Okay.
yeah.
Now, if a person is not a fit for you, is there
Mhm.
some type of recommendation to another VC or to somebody else that you feel might be more compatible for them?
Yeah, we definitely try to do that. I'm like you said, Chisa, I don't, I'm at a season of life. It's not like competitive. I want to
Mhm.
give you the information you need and send you to where I think it won't be just another, like, not like you call a company. I'm a patch you over to, option 3, and then that person, we trying to make it efficient for founders because, I mean, it does take a lot of calls and a lot of phone
Mhm.
conversations. But I am thoughtful. If I had enough of a conversation with a founder to think that, hey, you should talk to so and so, then usually I'm trying to make that happen.
Okay.
And that's what I love about this work too, because it's about networks. If we
Mhm.
can't write the check and we know money's out there in your space, and we want to get our people there,
Mhm.
because that's really what's been part of the issue. We haven't been able to get in the conversation from them to see
Yeah.
how ready we are, and equally as ready, is not better prepared than our white counterparts
Mhm.
who seem like I can raise money by just blinking an eye,
Mhm.
um, and it's there. So yeah, we are totally enthused about introductions and pointing folks to where capital might be accessed.
Okay, I love that. Now, what one word or phrase or piece of motivation do you want to leave entrepreneurs with? So if they're watching this, what do you want to say to them? One thing.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I'm not being too creative today. I'm going with resilient.
Okay.
Uh, and it's interesting to me being in theology and we study words and going back to root words and original language interpretations all the time. And I get it that people are resistant to certain words. Like now, some people say, "Don't keep calling me resilient. Why do I have to always be resilient? Because
Mhm.
black folks, that's just what our life is." I'm like, yeah, and I embrace it. I
Mhm.
learned, I watched the Super Bowl last night. That was an incredible game. Two of the greatest quarterbacks we probably see of all time
Mhm.
competing at the highest level. And Patrick Mahomes injured his ankle, and it looked like he got re-injured. He was like, "I ain't coming out. Y'all just tape a brother up and get me back in there. I'm going to win this thing."
Mhm.
That's resilient, adapting to adverse challenges. And if you're bringing a product to bear for the community, um, and you know that it's supposed to be there, then you'll adapt and you will adjust and you will have the resolve to get past the no's, the runarounds, maybe a level of sacrifice that
Mhm.
some people won't want to make to get the business where you believe it ought to be. And that's what I love about this work, because I see so many of us who are doing that. Um, and we know the risks are high. Let's face
Mhm.
it, most businesses fail. I mean, it is that, and that's why resilience means, well, if it fails, then I find either another way, or maybe I go in another direction totally.
Mhm.
And but I'm not going to just, you
Stop.
know, stop and just lay down and just bemoan all what we already know, which
Mhm.
is we as a people have to fight headwinds all the time, and we're built for it. Um,
Definitely.
Prayerfully with the right community and the right support, because I know it's not easy to get up sometimes every day and you feel like all the doors have been closing or the capital is running out. Um, and not everybody's story ends with a Hollywood ending, but
Mhm.
the only way it can do that is if you believe that you will reach an important end, an important milestones with the business, and just keep going.
I love that.
Yeah,
Now, as we wrap up, can you just tell everybody where they can find you? Because they can go to the website, but if you can give
yeah,
them the website.
absolutely. Resilient-ventures.com or resilientventures.org. We have both URLs. And if you go out there, you'll see a resource page that has a lot of information I think you'll find helpful. There's some podcasts out there we've been on to talk about our story that will hopefully be inspiring. Um, and my email is keith.daniel@resilient-ventures.com. Um, and I'm usually pretty good about getting back to folks. So any of our listeners, any of your listeners, I'll be open to trying to connect with.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you and your time. And we want to let
Yes.
those students go ahead and get their professor so that they can get
Thank
all the
you.
knowledge they can get today. Thank you so much for being on. Everybody, if you're watching on the replay, don't forget you can still leave comments and you can still go ahead and share this after it's done. And everybody that's watching live, thank you so much for watching and keep coming back every week because you know that it's time for you to show up and show out and always give it to the people. Have a great day, guys. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Chisa. Have a great day, everyone. Appreciate you. All right.